Hello, I'm Jessie Gray. Welcome to Personalities. Today we have a program that's very unique. I don't exactly know how it's going to turn out, but I know it'll be very interesting. We have a group of 4 artists. They are individually from left to right: Simone Gayon, Ronald Denoda, Philip Sherrod, and Ari Rusimov. They are members, in fact, the founding members of the Street Painters, a group of artists called the Street Painters. There are 11 total members, and we're going to go back to the beginning today and ask how the group was formed, what the group was about. I might also add that I'm certainly not one of the founding members, but I'm very pleased to be a member of the Street Painters. Phil, let's begin. What are Street Painters? What are you trying to express? How are you unique? And then we'll go back to how you began.
All right. I'd like to say that the group really is concerned with maybe a movement called feelism, or individualistic feelings, which metaphorically or on location there is a direct contact with the street as a psyche. The work is very direct, alla prima, in some cases heavy impasto, to a very thin, almost super thin type of, it's hot though, it's all warm. All of the statements are warm as a humanistic effort. But the group met in various places, from the street to the psyches of seeing one or the other's paintings. And this group of 4 represent the backbone 4, as we call them.
Now, some of you met actually on the street.
Yeah. Denoda and I met on the street via Simon Gayon here. Rusimov, I think he and I had met 3 months earlier. 3, 4, 6? All right, 6 months earlier, and via meeting each other as personalities, we ended up talking about our reasons and our desires towards painting. And it's a very hot group, a very temperamental group, if you might say so.
By hot, do you mean not only temperamental, but the paintings are immediate, alive, direct, aggressive,
assaulting, and sentimentally poetical at the same time. Some of us are very lyrical. Some of us are very, we're honest, upfront.
Now, you 3 met each other on the streets. You've been on the streets for many years. Have you met many other artists out there aside from yourselves? Most people aren't painting, at least New York City's a little really rough for most people to tackle. So have you met many other artists out there?
A friend of mine, another one of the Street Painters, why don't we name off the total group of Street Painters here?
That's a good idea. Go ahead.
Kenneth McIndoe has been out there with myself. I've been out there 19 years. Kenneth has been out there about 17. There's Myron Heiss, that's been out there, I think, 20 years. Simon Gayon, how long have you been out there in the street?
Well, I've been painting in the park, the Hudson River. My work has always been sort of within the context of street painting. That's to say, aggressive, romantic, as opposed to, I would say, classical, if one can be historic about it. I painted more in the streets of Paris than I have in the actual streets of New York, where it's much easier, much more accepted. But I've been painting outside, I'd say, for about 18 years.
There's something else about this group. You have given yourself, your paintings, I hate to say it, but a label, feelism.
Well, can we do one other thing? I'd like to finish announcing the total members of the group. Ronald Denoda has been out there about 20 years, 22 years. What have you been there?
About that.
Ari, how long have you been painting?
Oh, I've been painting since I was 3 years old, and I've been on this.
Not to say. Let's get Tag Day, Bruce McGibney. There's who else?
Don Gray.
Inger
Yerby. And of course, Jessie Yu. So that's, I think, announces the total number of the group. Now back to you. You've been painting how long, and you've lived how long?
About 150 years if I put everything together. But no, I've been out on the street in my own country, in Switzerland, and I was painting on the street in New York. Most of my work deals with the street in more of a symbolic sense rather than an outward sense, but I've also been out there on location.
Let's get to the root of the street painters, though. You say your paintings are hot, by meaning aggressive, sort of frontal, direct, and painted in in a moment of emotion, just letting whatever you feel stand on the canvas. And you've given a label to the street painter's paintings, feelism. Could you go into that a little, and why did you think it necessary to attach a label to it?
Well, I think the majority of all of the painters in this group comprise people that are more concerned about themselves relating to a real world. We could be called realist, psychic realist. We could be called anything that denotes a self not getting lost or getting totally lost, or making an honest effort to confront one's own feelings versus a world of, let's say, everything from literal Kanism to social liberal movements, or I'm saying educational promoted ways, the way you're supposed to become. I think that very strongly it's an individualistic effort to relate to oneself and the world as one feels. And I think that in painting, I think, versus past movements such as German Expressionism, we're by far more aggressive as an optimism. We're no longer confronted with the machine. We've dealt with it. It's a matter of trying to deal now with the own psyche. It's like a reversion or a total round-robin type of return to the self. It's I don't know. I think I'd like to go to Simon. He's got a lot of heavy, deep feelings, and he explodes on the street. His brush moves with an assault that sometimes ends up in abstract movements to life. And what do you feel, Si? I mean, we always talk about, what do you feel rather than, what do you think or what do you know about art? And of course, all of us have studied quite a bit.
Well, for me, it's I see it somewhat within the context of the truly anti-academic people. I think our group is truly anti-academic. Academic meaning an establishment art, the way the abstract expressionists were in their age, or the way the academies or the salons were in their age, or I would say now the true enemy coming will be realism. Realism meaning, or my definition of realism would be that of people completely absorbed with the technical aspects of paint, technical in a rendering way, an illustration of life, illustration as opposed to truly the feeling which derives from subject, the excitement, electricity, which comes out of, for example, the street. I think, for example, Ronnie, when he paints in the street, he's not a renderer. He's not rendering what's there. He is
absorbing
through a personal language, creating a poetry abstracted from the reality.
There are very few people around. It's a miracle that this group was formed. That actually you three at least met on the street and found a similarity in your psyches and that this group was formed, because when you look at the scene of modern art, there's very little of that around these days. As you say, it is just a rendering if it's realism, and if not, it's just total nihilism.
Yeah. Well, the society somehow has forced us to come into a group. It's like in colleges and universities, everything is taught through isms and categorized and imprisoned within prisms of
isms.
Yeah, of categories, of historic context. And truly a romantic group, romantic meaning for me, a belief in an overall individuality, a human concern where a person can go out and deal with feelings as opposed to an academic studio or exponent of an overall salon.
And yet have that as a basis from which to spring, so that it isn't just that anyone thinks they can throw anything on the canvas and say that's feeling. I mean,
right.
Obviously it does spring from a basis of technique.
Well, the tradition of painting, and I'd like to come in about it right now because I have some feelings on this. Back to, I think, the individual psyche confronting reality, we have never existed before. Whether it be Denoto, whether it be Rusumov, whether it be Gaon, we come out expecting the world as our own. We're that aggressive in the sense that we're that desperately reaching out for truth. We're not supporting past issues of history. Of course, we're classicists in the sense that we're natural-born painters, but we won't follow any ism as an educated thing like abstract expressionism. Thealism, how we got that was that I think one of the critic, Lawrence B. Sandro, back about October, saw the group, saw some of the work, and commented. And of course, we had been talking about, I mean, if you think about it in terms of academia, the educated system, or wherever life is, or wherever the arts are taught, they don't talk about one's feelings. They always talk about a promoted movement. But the basis behind this group is that we have not only feelings, but we really are spitting them out, and we don't give a damn about anything. We're really getting to it. We're getting out there, and a lot of the people out there in the street say, "Man, I feel you, and I almost hear you," you know, through that color. That's color, man. We deal through color.
What led you to the street? Why did you choose the street?
Well,
Why did you go out on the street?
Rusimov to the street. He was led out there by the three of us, but it's because his work relates to ours, and the fact that he's been working more, as he says, symbolically from a street psyche. And he once was, I think, a Cossack.
Yeah.
But what led you to the street?
Well, I tell you, I come from a very old line Russian family, and so by nature I'm a wild man. And in my art, I have to say that my art is very, very coarse. It's very rough, and it's not. It's only restrained to my own inclinations, my own feelings. So naturally, I found a identity with the group. I mean, I couldn't identify with any of the slickness or any of the hocus pocus, phony, pretentious display or exhibit that was around at the time. So only the fearless movement, the street painters, this was a group that I could identify with.
What not only led you in the street, but what experiences have you had on the street painting?
Great many, you know. I found one thing to be true, and that's contrary to my thought. When I was first going out there, I expected a great amount of hostility, but in opposite, I saw everybody was enjoying it. You know, it's almost like I could hear balalaikas playing. I could hear everybody dancing. I could see the whites, the blacks, the cops, the muggers. Everybody was out there. You know, the Christians, the Jews. It was really everybody celebrated with this group. You would believe something different, but believe it or not, it's a celebration being out there, and everybody gets to be a part of it.
Phil, you've been painting for 19 years on the street. Have you noticed changes during that time from when you began painting to now? Have your experiences changed?
I think back, as far as 59, 60, there was a more hostile, should I say, uneducated crowd in that I was the lonely artist. They always identify you with that lonely symbolic icon of artist on the street, you're nuts. But now it's become a party out there. Like Rusimov says, it's like a gigantic party. You dance with a bus for a while, and you dance with, let's say, a black woman for a while, and maybe you end up dancing with a black man. But truly, it's a place of meeting where if you're not afraid, and they feel you out there. I'm talking about the people out in the street relative to subjects and objects, like the Coca-Cola sign or whatever. Everything is the same. It's like one total absorption of one's guts coming back to one that one's known from birth to now.
What do you get? Maybe everyone would like
Ronnie's a good example, is that Ronnie, I think, almost meets people before he speaks to them. They look at his canvas and they see him washing his acrylic brush in the street puddle to get it clean enough to paint with, and they start saying, "Hey man, I do that at home too."
No, but Phil, one thing about the street, well, I think it's going to be changed, what they're doing in 42nd.
They're going to hang us soon.
No.
On the chauffeur side.
42nd Street, they're going to get all the glamour down there. But what we're doing is the people are real, and the project of society this time.
Do you get more of an energy, a direct vitality from the street than you do, say, if you were painting a still life? Is there any difference? I know there isn't in the way you approach it, but do you get something from the street that you don't get from any other subject?
Well, I'll speak out real quick and throw it to Simon. I think that any artist, if he's true to himself, has to relate. Everything is different. A car is different than a squash. And there are different vibes or feelings. There are different speed time zones. There are different desperations within your relationship between a dog and a human being. And it depends on how brutal that human being might be or how passive. everything is different, and I think that the one thing that seemingly is needful is that the artists in this group, and I speak in plural of the 11, have gone to the street because it excites them enough to respond to. It makes contact with their own psyches. It's like living in a total, maybe rock and roll music, but psyched up maybe from a Beethoven side. It's like truly identification. And I've seen Simon out there in the street get so excited he forgot he even was painting, and that's when he does his best work.
Well, you know,
it's when he thinks he gets.
Right, no, it's perfectly true. You know, in the street there is a rhythm, an actual rhythm. There's a beat. There's an electrical power.
Yeah.
And you're so taken and under so much pressure to capture almost via your subconscious, you know, and absorb some of the energy that's out there. You don't have time to think. And you're really letting your subconscious do part of the painting.
And that's
whereas in the studio, you're constantly looking back, reworking the same areas over and over again, and truly it becomes boring. It becomes perfect, but it becomes boring. And there is no boredom. There's always a feeling that you're part of life.
It brings an immediacy to it, certainly.
Right. And our society in itself is so closed up, especially in New York. We're afraid to go outside. We're confined to our hi-fis and our TVs and our conjoints, you know, that we can't really experience the street as freely as it's meant to. People are showing off in the street. They're displaying their sexuality. They're displaying a need to communicate, a need to look, a need to be entertained. And truly, the best entertainment in New York is in the street.
I was going to say something. Art, to me, is like a rainbow. You know, you look at a rainbow after a storm, and you chase it.
Amen, brother.
And you know, it comes down. And all my life, I got in painting accidentally. You know, and I was always running after the artist all the time. Something that I was looking for, I'm hearing now with the street painters. I'm you know, very expressed our feeling. Everything you say is feeling. I feel this, I feel that. Now we're putting this in context.
It's really a miracle that
we feel.
This group got together, that you found each other.
Exactly.
Really.
Well, that would be more miracle if we stay together.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that, personally. I mean, we deal with paranoid people, frustrated within their own helplessness in society, having only their art as a true energy, turning on each other. I would say, I hope it really stays together, because what you have is 11 powerful personalities who truly, within their own domain, if they were in business or politics, would become great men, I would say, from their own personal power.
Is it? But as a good friend also. You know, remember when, you know, like when we go out, like how many people go on, when they go away on a weekend, they go painting, you know, or something, and you really get in with yourself, you know? Like you look at a canvas, pure, something pure, and that's when you relate to everything, what comes out from your inside, you know, that's it.
I agree. Do you know, we haven't mentioned
a lot of fun we got,
one of the most important things, and that is that the street painters are having a show at the Ingber Gallery at 3 East 78th, and I must say to our director, if there's any way to put that on the, punch that up, 3 East 78th, the Ingber Gallery.
June the 27th.
The street painters are having a show there from June 27th, and it will run all of July and July 30th.
Is there a graphic?
There's no graphic. If we could put it up on a character generator, that would be great. If not, we'll keep announcing it.
Also, we're on WBAI July the 12th at 8 p.m. Barbara London's program, announcing 4 members of the street painters. Discussion and so forth.
And we certainly hope that you'll listen to the show on WBAI, and certainly we hope you'll see the exhibition at Ingber Gallery, 3 East 78. Let's go to your paintings before we run out of time. And we've got so many behind us too. If there's any way to just quickly scan. Okay, let's start. We're starting with yours, Phil, of the street.
Yeah, the White Rose. That's one of the bars on Lexington, about I think 24th or 5th Street. They've changed the facade. It has a taxi cab or some parked car in front. It was a rainy night, and I painted for, I don't know, a couple of hours, and got soaked and a little chilly, but got a very frontal, it's a very direct approach in composition.
Okay, I'm going to just flip it over. And
it's hurt because you don't have the color depth. Which
yes, these paintings are exploding in just vibrations of color.
That's 6th Avenue, and that's 25th, 26th Street, red truck, that's all. 6th Avenue, shadow, sunlight, Tony's fruit store, and typewriter and so forth, discount facade.
The group takes in all neighborhoods of the city. Let's do one more of yours, Phil. You love Times Square and the show facades. Other people paint the waterfront, some paint neighborhoods.
Well,
all aspects of the city are represented in truly individual styles, aren't they?
Yeah, this is 42nd Street, and it's again the assault, and in color it's just a torrent of brush strokes and feeling. Show facade and so forth.
Now, since we're here with you, let me just quickly go to figure that you've painted.
Yeah, this was painted off of a girl named Helen Liebhaber. She's a beautiful girl. I wonder, incidentally, wherever you are, Helen, contact me soon. But it's just a composition of she used to grasp herself in an embryonic state, and I used to always love this angle of her. Yeah.
And a portrait.
And that's Robin Brown from Brooklyn. That's a head he set for me one August, smoked his pipe. He only came in and sat down in 3 hours' time. He said, I think it's a nice piece, and he said goodbye, and that's the last I heard of him.
That's the last you've ever heard of him.
Yeah.
Ari, let's go quickly to you. We only have 6 minutes.
Yeah, this is a self-portrait, a portrait of me, minus the little hair I have left. Even less of it is on that picture with my little ancestor there. And I've done that in 1975. Portrait of Rusimov, as in the 4 Russian Fs. Brylov, Rubilov, Larionov, and Rusimov.
Okay, Rusimov.
And here's a little painting I did of 2 water carriers on the go. Up the hill and down to work.
Here is what I would call a Rusimov street painting. Am I right or wrong?
In a sense, yes, you are right. This is a painting called Business as Usual, and it deals with Second World War. It deals with mass collaboration. And as you see in the back, the ghettos, you know, and the concentration camps, everything is in flames and everything is going on there. In the front, 3 powers collaborating. I did it in 1974.
Okay. Now, I believe this is Simone's.
Yeah, I'd rather show the portrait actually, because that's sort of one that
All right.
I think is more interesting.
We'll
There's
just
so many of Times Square that this one sort of, I think, 42nd Street is, where a lot of people from uptown, a lot of the blacks are sort of hanging out now, and they truly enjoy the streets. They truly sort of, I think, really enjoy the beat of the street, and they're coming out there. It's their new downtown, and the whites have sort of shied away. The middle class is not responding anymore to Times Square, and they're happy to pose. They're happy to talk. They're really interested in the painting. And this young man was walking by, and he posed me for a couple hours, and I really enjoyed the experience.
Did he just voluntarily pose?
Yeah, well, he came by and asked, what I was doing. And
do you ever have any threatening situations develop out on the street, or is it mostly one of goodwill, so that most...
I have one story, which was funny. One Puerto Rican guy, with 2 bottles of Manischewitz wine was out there one Saturday night. And he said, what you doing, man? I said, well, I'm painting. And he says, well, paint me. I said, okay. So, yeah, let's finish it. So I started to paint him. And 3 hours later, we had an agreement that he wouldn't look until I was finished. And then, a big crowd, gathers around me, and he yells out, I'm no fucking nigga, I'm a Puerto Rican, And he started to really get violent. And he said, well, you Jew boy, you're going to sell that painting and make money. He figured that anything that, I was doing was probably going to be in some Whitney museum selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and he was somehow getting cheated out of his share, and he wanted his share, either the painting or true payment for,
What did you do?
For his work. Well, I bought him a hot dog, and Phil showed up, and I sort of let Phil take over, got in the taxi and ran home.
And what did you do, Phil? How did you take over?
Well, I just threw my arm around him and said, "Hey, George." And hello, George, out there.
We only wish we could sell it.
No, George was an intelligent man that felt maybe that he had been somehow seduced, like we all wake up later and feel like, you know, our whole life was a seduction. And in truth, I said, George, you know, you agreed to sit. You know, let the guy alone. You know, he's a painter. He's concerned with his own imagery. He painted you as best he could, and that's it. You know, George is a nice guy, though. So, all right.
Ronnie.
Is that wine that night? That's what.
Yeah, well, he got mean. He got mean. This guy got mean.
Again, Times Square is coming up on the monitor.
This is a famous Ronald DiNota.
Ronnie, would you care to tell us, you go out mainly at night in Times Square. Does night attract you more than day?
Vampire.
Well, I was introduced to the street accidentally again. Only about 2 years I painted with this group because of Simon over here. And I've been painting direct. And you know, you talked about nature before, where Phil was painting for so many years, 19 years in the city. I was running from the city and running up to Montauk and the Catskills and the New England and all over. And when they introduced me to the street, like they all say, like Simon's saying, the rhythm and everything. And I'm trying to get this in my paintings, and I like that because it's an emotional feeling.
You certainly have it.
And I found something in New York that's really enticed me. I'm really excited about them, and all they were talking about, that's what I'd like to do.
We've got 1 minute, Ronnie, to quickly show 2 more of your paintings. And we might say during this time that the street painters are having a show at the Ingber Gallery, 3 East 78th Street. It begins June 27th. This show will air after the opening, and it runs all of July. We hope you'll see it. 3 East 78th Street, the Ingber Gallery. Ronnie, you certainly get the same feelism into your paintings, whether it's landscape or here we have a harbor.
You know, Ronnie's a good painter he's always talking about street painters. Before he ever met the street painters, he was doing the same stuff he's doing now. He's just enjoying having other people to paint with him, that's all.
That's a good point.
It sounds like everyone's a catalyst for each other and is opening up new subject matter and new awarenesses just by being together. Thank you very much for being on Personalities.
Thank you.
Ari Rusimov, Philip Sherrod, Ronnie DiNota, and Simone Gayon. I'm Jessie Gray.